The public has a long-held fascination with detectives. Detectives see a side of life the average person is never exposed to. In this podcast series, I Catch Killers with Gary Jubilant, I will be interviewing real detectives, taking the audience into their world, a world that is rarely seen by the public. I spent 34 years as a cop. For 25 of those years, I was catching killers. That's what I did for a living. I was a homicide detective. I'm no longer interviewing bad guys, instead I'm interviewing detectives. The guests I've selected are the cops I consider real detectives. Their business was catching bad guys, and they were prepared to go into a world where pressure, risk and sacrifice was the norm. These are their stories. Welcome back to part 2 of retired crime scene officer Steve Horn's podcast. If you listen to part 1, you've got an understanding of Steve's extensive experience as a crime scene officer. In part 2, Steve, relying on that experience, will take us through a fascinating journey, talking in detail about the use of forensic science in criminal investigations. We will discuss cold cases and some of the most intriguing crime scenes Steve has attended in his career. Let's welcome back Steve Horn. So I want to talk about cold cases as well, and your views and experience on that. But in your time as a crime scene officer, is there any case that you found particularly interesting or took a twist and turn that you didn't expect?
Oh, gee, that's hard. A lot of.
Or that gotcha moment where you found something that clinched the case.
Oh, look, I'll just say this: there's 4 homicides that I've been involved with over the years.
Yeah.
Where I remember I was with Russell Oxford.
Yep.
And we're doing a search warrant on a suspect's home. It was for a murder of a young woman, and the actual victim was his brother's girlfriend.
Right.
And we were sort of running out of time for the search warrant. And I remember yelling out to the team that was searching, "Has he got a watch? Has he got a watch?"
Yeah.
Anyway, eventually they bring a watch out, and there's not much time left, and I'm looking at the watch, and there's little spots of blood on the wristwatch, which later on examined turned out to be the victims.
Little things like that.
Little things like that.
Yeah.
And then there was another murder at Bexley years ago, where an 8-month pregnant woman was stabbed to death.
Yep.
And I think 2 or 3-year-old boy, a son, he was stabbed in the throat in an outside toilet.
Right.
And anyway, the husband was the suspect.
Yeah.
They took him to the police station at Cogra. After doing the crime scene and went back to examine him and photograph him, I noticed he had a watch on. Now, he hadn't said anything to the investigators who were the homicide at the time, and I took his watch and looked at it, and I said, "It's got a little bit of blood on it, I have to take your watch."
Yeah.
As I said, treating people, properly to start off with. And he said, "Oh, yeah, well, you better tell them I've got something to tell them."
So,
Yeah. But I think there's been about 4 cases just on the wristwatch.
Yeah.
Because, they take it off to wash their hands.
Yeah.
Don't think about it.
That's interesting. And again, like what you say, the way that you treat people, it does pay dividends.
It does.
But changes in crime scene, like with DNA. Yeah. Tell me when DNA first came in.
Oh, we started. Well, DNA's been developed since the 1800s, really. And it wasn't until many years later, and I think it's the 1980s or something in England, where they used it on a particular case over there.
Yeah.
They're looking for a serial rapist and murderer.
Yep.
And it was actually found by accident.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, they identified who the offender was, because the suspect at the time had got his mate to provide. They did a mass screening.
Yeah.
And he got his mate to supply a sample to the police. And then he was caught bragging about it in the pub.
Yeah.
How his mate provided a sample, so they got his sample. His name was Pitchfork, I think, and identified him as being the offender for the murders and that. But it's developed over the years, and I think in 2000 we were looking at it, started developing it. But the thing was, we had to have a database.
Yes.
So they had to develop legislation to get DNA from inmates to start building up a database and things like that. And I think it was about 2001 as forensics we actually started to use DNA.
I think the first time I used it in an investigation, and I think it was early 90s, it was the murder of Eileen Cantlay. And she was an 81-year-old woman that was sexually assaulted and murdered in a home, and semen left on her body. And we had a really good suspect. I was working with Jim Williams. I don't know if you remember Jim Williams. Working with Jim Williams at the time, and we were going really hard at this particular person for very good reason. And we got his DNA sample, and then we sent it off to the laboratories, and they came back and said it's not him. And we were so confused. We're going, what? But we've got all this evidence that's pointing us in that direction, and they've come back and said, no, it's not him. Then we got another suspect, got his DNA, and they came back and said, yeah, that's him. Now, for detectives, it was very hard to... was there a laboratory at... Pymble comes to mind, or on the North Shore. We went in and we were actually shown the chart because we couldn't get it through our heads. How we can just walk into this bloke's place and arrest him for murder based on this scientific results. But it changed the landscape, didn't it?
Yeah,
and it made your job a lot more pressure, like as in not missing things.
Oh yes, but again, DNA is a tool.
Yeah.
You really just can't rely on it.
Yeah.
You know, look, there's been murders where, you know, we've collected material, blood, semen, and it's still unsolved today. You know?
Yeah.
You know, the offender has never been arrested, never taken samples from them. Have they gone overseas or back? You know, we've still got, I think, quite a few cases that are unsolved. But
there's one that I'm not sure if you worked on this one. I worked on it with Paul Jacob, the Central Coast rapist. 5 women had been raped, and I think we had DNA linking him to 3 of them. And one was an elderly lady, one was a teenager, and all that. And we still haven't found him. We've got the DNA, we test everyone that we can, but it just hasn't come up.
Well, there's the Eastern Suburbs rapist.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite. You know, he was getting up to over 20.
Yeah.
He could be responsible for.
Yeah.
And nothing has come up DNA wise.
Yeah.
But you know, DNA, we started using it and developing it over the years, and it's slowly become more sensitive.
Yes.
Years ago, before DNA, we'd have to collect the sample as big as a 50-cent piece.
Yeah.
Now it's like a pinhead size, and with the PowerPlex 21, which is what they use at the forensic laboratory, the system they use, they can do it for smaller samples and degraded samples of DNA.
Yeah.
Now it can be skin samples, it can be blood, it can be semen, it can be saliva. They even talk about earwax. You know, so there's a lot of areas that's still being developed.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm worried about with DNA, you know, is that police go to crime scenes. Crime scene people or forensic officers go to crime scenes. Contractors, ambulance, you name it. How many people actually go into to that crime scene? And a lot of times we do get, you know, samples that we can't identify with anybody. So to start off with, I think every police officer, not just forensic officers, should provide a DNA sample and put on a database. You know. Currently, there's quite a few forensic officers that have their samples on a database, which is at the lab at Lincoln. But I think every police officer, investigator, general duty, or whatever, should provide a DNA sample. I know that every new recruit going through the academy has to provide a DNA sample for elimination to make sure they're not linked to any crime or anything of that nature. But those samples are then, to my knowledge, are destroyed. So that's an area, you know, like how many people go into a murder scene, Gary? You know,
I
15?
Know,
20? You know, and unless you can really preserve it thoroughly, you know, just you and I talking now, we've got DNA everywhere.
Well, that's what I find amazing. Like, literally brush up against you, and my DNA can be on you, and from a detective's point of view or an investigator's point of view, that could be misleading. It could really send you off, and it's almost like the science has got so sensitive, or
it's getting
to the point. And I've shared that concern that you've raised. That is it going to get to the point where it's just so confusing? Like anyone that's been in this pub might share the same DNA if it gets to that point. But there's some. And I know, and you were my go-to person whenever I had a tricky one with a homicide investigation, but where you can pull DNA from, like if someone touches that windowsill, you might be able to pull DNA from that years later, and things like that. I just find it amazing.
It hasn't been cleaned or wiped down. You know, we've gone back to a murder scene that's nearly 40 years old.
Yeah.
Lift up the carpet, bloodstain's still there, and got the victim's blood and an unknown sample from that bloodstain. Nearly 40 years.
And the constant, because I know we do a forensic review on some of the older cases I've got with Barraville. It was one that I'd bring you in for that forensic review, and Colin Walker's clothes that were weighted down with rocks in the river and her belt. Remember, we even though it had been in the water for months, we're still looking at potentially getting DNA from that. So. Yeah, it's fascinating where it goes. I hope we're not police anymore, I keep forgetting. Just some little controversial thing that came up, I'm no longer in the police. I think that we've got to progress as well, because otherwise we're going to get overrun by it, and crime scene is becoming more and more complicated.
Well, you being an investigator, Gary, and you've got a particular crime scene and have an unknown sample.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You don't know who it belongs to.
Yeah.
And unless we can eliminate it, particularly from someone that's been in that scene.
Yeah.
It could be your suspect, your offender.
Yeah.
If we eliminate it and it was the police officers, well, that's one area you don't have to worry about.
Yeah. And it can be so misleading if you're chasing.
And then you've got the other issue, going to court. Well, if you contaminated this, what else did you contaminate?
Well, I'm waiting. I haven't personally seen it, but I'm waiting for some of, I'd say, inexperienced crime scene officers. That someone like Winston Terracini gets hold of them in a witness box, and if they say the very thing that you're cautioning people against, not offering up stuff that they're not aware of, that they will get savaged and evidence will be thrown out. Because it is so critical to the case. Speaking of cases, cold cases. You spent a lot of time on that towards the latter part of your career.
10 years, 2008 to 2018.
What's your thoughts on that? Just a general view.
I think it was a very important avenue to take up, and been taken up before, even though I know there was a cold case homicide teams and that. And but having someone in forensics who could work with those teams and particularly someone senior in forensics, and started looking at various old cases and pulling out all the information. You know, we travelled around the whole state, locating exhibits, crime scene briefs, negatives, things of that particular nature, which had been stored at police stations.
That was an important role, and I don't think the public appreciate this. And I won't say it's embarrassing; it's just the way of the world. But a murder that happens 20 years ago, and there's this country police station in the back corner of the exhibit room. There's a box that no one's looked in for 10 years, and that had evidence that now would be relevant. So that was part of your role, going around and just making sure that all the exhibits for these outstanding cases,
if we could locate them.
Yeah.
Now the trend is to get all those country exhibits for homicides and unsolved stuff to the exhibit storage facility at Potts Hill. So it's much closer and it's all recorded and stuff like that. But look, I think it's very important to have a cold case team of forensic officers. I know in Western Australia, they have their own crime scene people that look at cases. My suggestion was that we should have a team, particularly a forensic team working with homicide. To look at cold cases and also current jobs that homicide are looking at, and be a forensic team, initial forensic team for that job.
Steve,
not necessarily to take over and do all the work for it, work in conjunction with the local crime scene people and be a liaison to a certain point.
From a homicide detective's point of view, I think that would be gold. and it frustrates me that with someone like your experience, you put those suggestions up and they wouldn't consider it. Like, I just think that would help so much to have something like that, have people there that you, and that's virtually how I used you as my own personal forensic team.
Well, it's not only homicide. I work with sex crimes and all their unsolved sexual assault cases.
Yeah.
And I'll give them lots of information and help identify numerous serial rapists for them.
Yeah.
So it's I think an area that should be developed. I don't think it is being, but I think it should be an area.
I don't think we fully appreciate the importance of it. The role that the crime scene play, working in unison with the investigators. But
look, you could put someone senior in with two junior people.
Yeah.
And then swap those junior people every 12 months or 2 years or whatever, and rotate them through. It gives them experience, experience working with investigators, looking what they need, what the type of investigation they're looking at, and being with them, and then you could, after a couple of years, change your senior person around and things like that.
But that continuity and that connection between the crime scene officers and the investigators is so important. And I've made reference to the Barraville thing, but I'll talk on that briefly. That we got you in, I can't even remember, it was 15 years ago, it might have been longer, to do a forensic review on the exhibits that were gathered for the murder of the 3 Aboriginal children. And then each time, or not each time, but a couple of years down the track, we'd look at it again, and because there's been forensic developments and that, we had the suspects caravan up at Maxville.
Yeah.
I think this typifies who you are. We've had a caravan as an exhibit for it. Was on 25 years, and this caravan was basically collapsing. And I'd ask you to come up, and you'd be looking in it. And I think I went there one day, and the caravan had collapsed, and I'm looking for you, and you're in the caravan, searching through the caravan. But stuff like that. But the continuity that you knew that I could pick the phone up and say to you, look, we're looking at Barraville again, and you knew where all the exhibits were, and that's something that gets lost because people, it's just human nature, move on from jobs.
Well, some people retain exhibits, and others don't. Some police stations that retain exhibits, some police stations don't.
Well,
many years ago, we would keep them for years and years, and then eventually they nothing happened with them, get destroyed because it was taking up too much room.
Well,
no DNA. Now with DNA,
Well, we've got it right in one regards that we're not getting rid of any homicide exhibits, and we
sexual assaults
retain those. But
and then you also had the innocence panel.
Yes,
which doesn't exist anymore, but there's still that opportunity for someone
to re-examine,
to have exhibits re-examined if they fit the criteria.
And that's and you don't want someone innocent in jail if the evidence is there that can support they hadn't done it. So, well, Steve, a career that spans 50 years in the cops and 44 years in crime scene, and the things that you've seen, the things that you've done. Is there any murder investigations that, for whatever reason, or crime scenes that really stick with you?
One I did many years ago at Bexley.
Yeah.
Got called to a house at Bexley, and there were 2 young children who had been murdered. One was in the bedroom, in her bed. She would have been about 12, I assume, and then there was a younger child in a bed in an attic in the house, but also out in the backyard, rolled up in plastic, was an adult female as well. So I went to that particular crime scene and carried out an examination. And whilst we were at the crime scene, the mother of the 2 girls actually attended the premises.
Right.
And police were speaking to her, and she'd actually murdered her sister-in-law. That was the body wrapped up in the plastic out the back.
Right.
And she still had the knife in the handbag. She also killed her youngest daughter.
Right.
And then killed her eldest daughter. And what it all stems from, that she was very close to her brother.
Yeah.
And her brother had gone through a recent divorce and
Yeah.
lost everything, the children, the house and everything. And his sister regretted it and hated the sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So she enticed the sister-in-law, who was a school teacher, to come to the house one morning where they had an argument and attacked her in the kitchen and tried to strangle her and eventually stabbed her. She put the body in plastic and dragged it out to the back and tried to clean up the premises. Then she's gone up to the attic where she's murdered her younger daughter, stabbed her. The eldest daughter was away to school camp. Now this occurred on a Monday,
Yeah.
I think, and the other girl didn't come home until the Wednesday. But in the meantime, the father asked his wife, "Where is the young daughter?" He said, "Oh, don't disturb her. She's asleep. Leave her alone."
Right.
So he did nothing about it.
Yeah.
And the older daughter come home and mum attacked her, and she had defensive wounds and stabbed her as well. And the father found her body
Right.
the following morning. And so what she did, the sister-in-law had driven there.
Yeah.
So she got in the sister-in-law's car and drove down to a council car park down the road and left it there. But I was can't remember. I was waiting for the pathologist or someone to come, but I was having to go around the premises doing all the work, and I was down on my hands and knees in the kitchen, looking for any traces of blood, and I found traces, small spots of blood on the legs of the table, which she hadn't cleaned up or removed, and was able to sample those and check the mop and buckets and anything like that. But I was in a spare room, and there was some school exercise books there.
Yeah.
And so I was just flicking through the pages, which I've done quite often, just looking for anything.
Yeah.
And I come across like a diary that the mother had written, saying how she killed so-and-so and killed so-and-so, but the dates were out a bit.
Yeah.
So just something a bit unusual. But going to court, the husband stood by her all the time.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you there. There is that, to me, typifies a good crime scene officer, looking through books, looking through pages to find something, and you find a date that doesn't add up. That's the type of dedication that got you the reputation that you've got as a crime scene officer.
But it's spending the time there and doing it. Like there was another homicide. Again, I can't remember.
Sorry, what happened? I interrupted.
Oh well, I went to trial. The husband stood by her all the time.
Yeah.
And but there was a bit of a story going around that he wanted to move the whole family to Western Australia.
Right.
And his wife didn't want to go because she wanted to be close to her brother.
Yeah.
And the inference was that she may have been going to kill him as well.
Right.
But he stood by her all the time. And look, I think even she didn't get much time in jail at all.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it exactly was, but that's one that stands out, particularly the two little kids and things like that.
And the time that you've spent and seen, and like you've seen so many dead bodies, and reflecting back, do you ever sit and reflect on what your career has been about and what you've done with your career?
Not really. All I've tried to do is, is done what's been asked of me, done my job.
Yeah.
And any skills I have is pass on to younger staff.
Yeah.
Like there was can't remember his surname. I think his Christian name was Dorian.
Yeah.
And he was a university student, and he was living over at Lilyfield in a one-bedroom unit over there. And he was in a relationship with a nurse from the psych hospital at Balmain.
Right.
And anyway, there was a fellow fishing in the river, Cook's River, and he snagged onto a bag and pulled the bag in and had a look inside the bag, and there was a human head.
Yeah.
Calls the police, nothing else, just a human head. Calls the police, and what had occurred was, inside a pocket of the bag was his university ID.
Right.
So from there they were able to find out where he lived and everything like that. So we went to where he was residing, and another person was now living in that flat, so we had to move him out and put him up in other accommodation. And where do we look? Where has this murder occurred? And this person been shot, I think, at least 3 times in the head. So first thing we do is check the bathroom. because obviously the body's been dismembered, and the easiest place to do is the bathroom. But you've got to remember when you're looking for it, you can collect all the samples because soap has fat in it.
Yeah.
It might give you a false reading with some of your some of your examinations. You do, but I decided to pull the carpet up. It was a kitchen dining area, and underneath the carpet, black stain, which obviously to me was blood.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, there's a lot of blood here. Anyway, I got down on my hands and knees, and I took the kick plate off the stove.
Yeah.
And the bottom of the stove, and got the torch, and what I see was a big pool of blood there that started to flake.
Right.
Anyway, so looking further, and found the Venetian blinds that were from the kitchen window under the bed. Got them out, pulled them out, and you can see little splats of blood on them. So we had a lot of information there. Something
happened
terrible
in
gone in
place.
that flat.
Yeah.
And but this nurse was like a part-time girlfriend.
Yeah.
But she was also speaking to patients at the hospital about how disposing of a body. She was writing a novel and wanted their thoughts how to dispose of a body.
Yeah, well, sometimes our cooks aren't that clever.
Part of our examination was to examine all the derelict and vacant wards at the hospital over there.
Yeah.
There was stacks of them.
Right.
Thinking that something had occurred there, even right down into the dungeons under the main building, which was quite creepy. And even someone had made bloody weird altars and everything.
If you're calling it creepy, it must be creepy.
Anyway, but she was also a part-time girlfriend of the secretary of the shooters party.
Right.
He had firearms, and it went to his premises, and the firearm identified it coming out of his safe.
Right. Okay.
And the theory was that someone broke in, took the gun, but then they also broke in to put the gun back in the safe.
Yeah.
So,
a little bit of logic.
Yeah, so that's just another one when you know.
But they're interesting twists, aren't they? And people often ask me as a homicide detective, why do people murder and that? Sometimes it's just a dumb plan, and you catch them because it's If you try to put too much logic to a murder investigation, I think you sometimes go astray because it's not a logical act for someone to kill someone, and quite often they're just twists and turns. Someone's got it in their head, my life would be better without that person, and then they're pathetic attempts to cover it up.
But my last real court case, I suppose, it was for a drive-by shooting murder at Wiley Park.
Yeah.
Where a vehicle left the premises, it had the driver and a female passenger, his wife, and a 2-year-old child in the back. Car pulls up alongside, fires a number of shots, shoots the driver in the neck, but he survives. Yep. But also he shoots the wife and she dies.
Yeah.
The offending vehicle drives off and is found burnt out later on. But it was, I think, in 2000.
Yeah.
And I went out that night time. I wasn't on call, but I went out to assist my young crime scene person.
Yeah.
He'd only been probably 10 months in doing forensic work.
Yeah.
Which I did quite often. Obviously, I went in my own car.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I assisted her, but when it came to trial, she'd gone off with post-traumatic stress.
Right.
Also, another crime scene person from Bass Hill had gone off with post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
One ballistics person had gone off with post-traumatic stress.
So they're looking round. Who can we find? Where's...
So, not only do I have to give the evidence of the young female crime scene person, but also I had to do a statement of what I was involved in doing. Yeah. Also, the other crime scene person examined the vehicle, part of the ballistic stuff, and then I think I was in the witness box for like 3 days. Yeah. And one evening had to take the jury, the judge, the Crown defence out to the crime scene because there was an issue with the street lighting and stuff like that. And I was the only one that could talk to the jurors if they asked questions or anything like that. So, that was not because I did so much work with it, but because the other staff had gone off post-traumatic stress, which does happen. It's very similar to the Gillum murders.
Yeah.
Again, I was on my day off. It was a Saturday, I think. Yeah. The crime scene person was down that scene. I actually heard it on the news. Yeah. So I thought, 3 bodies. I'll just go and give them
and those that might know that one, it was the mother and father and a son.
The son.
Murdered, and the house was set alight.
Set afire. Yeah.
And the
surviving son
was tried, acquitted.
Hung jury first time.
Yeah.
Tried, then I think found guilty, then it appealed or something,
and I think his version of events, and correct me if I'm wrong, were that he came home and found his brother stabbing his parents.
No, not quite.
Yeah.
Not quite that.
What was his version?
His version was he was at the time sleeping in a flat down near the river because it's down.
That's right. Yeah.
And he alleges that his mother rang up on the intercom.
Yeah.
Instead of being stabbed, so he's allegedly raced up to the house.
Yeah.
Found his mother lying on the floor. His brother, the deceased brother, standing near his mother, and the knife was on a piano, I think, in the room, and the brothers, whatever's gone on, and then got had thrown accelerant around, got a match and it's gone boom. Yeah. So the 2 brothers are going to have a struggle. They've gone downstairs. So the surviving brother stabbed his brother 17 times, which both the mum and dad have been stabbed about 17 times. And then he's gone to the neighbours.
And I think the history was it was Mark Tedeschi, it was a hung jury. Margaret Caneen,
he did the second one,
prosecuted and convicted, and then it was overturned at appeal.
Yeah.
So we've got to sit here and say that the person is innocent of the charges.
Again, I had to give all the forensic evidence because the crime scene person had gone off with post-traumatic stress.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of crime scene officers do. Is that because of the nature of the work?
I think it is the nature of the work gets to them in the end. I know one crime scene person had been to 3 young children had been murdered. Yeah. And they had a particular toy in the room, which is the same as what his young child had. And for days and weeks later, he just couldn't cope anymore. And he eventually left the police with post-traumatic stress.
Well, I think it's a tough role. I tell people I think crime scene officers are the hardest role in the cops, and I know it's been glamorised with all the TV shows and all that about it. Yeah,
well, the TV shows were brought in, I think, mainly to put bums on seats in universities. Because they had all these crime scene courses and things like that. But when you look at it, Gary, if they come out, where are they going to get a job? They have to join the police. Like we do have civilians that do forensic work. Or they have to go and work a laboratory.
But it has become the sexy career, hasn't it? Like people like it and people are fascinated by it.
What story was that? I think it was CSI. It was promoting crime scene courses over in America.
Right.
It was part of that show. But if you look at that show, they use some of the equipment that we have. But do you see our people wearing stilettos? White clothing?
Steve, I see here, hand on heart, I've never seen you in stilettos. There was that one night, and I won't talk about that.
And they never turn a light on. They got those little torches they put in their mouth. I want one of those torches.
Maybe, see, Steve, if you came along a little bit later, maybe you could have been that trendy. And you could have walked around with a torch in your mouth.
The real shows that portray forensics is probably the English shows and some of the European shows. You look at on the news now and you see how our forensic people are suited up. Disposable suits, gloves.
Well, that's all because of the contamination of what we talked about before.
It's a big issue, contamination.
Well, I never thought about it. You go to a crime scene, you take a person away, then you interview them, and you've been in the crime scene, you've picked up victim's DNA, then you're interviewing the offender. And
it's like putting him in the police car. Putting the offender and the victim in the same police car on the same side. What are they transferring? If you have a smart barrister or something, it's like GSR. GSR used to be a problem. Particularly police officers getting
Do you want to just explain gunshot residue?
Gunshot residue is when you discharge a firearm. Residue comes out of the barrel and around other openings of the firearm for a distance of about a metre and get on your clothing, your hands and things like that. And if we can get to a suspect within a certain period of time, I think, it's like minimal of a couple of hours, we can use special adhesive lifts to look for gunshot residue.
Yeah.
But if you go and wash your hands or your clothing or something, or it's over a long period of time, it may not happen. I know there was a case where I think 11 hours after the actual shooting they were able to get the GSR, but it's not the same. And then, some of that residue, because it's metal particles, you get off brakes and things like that.
Yeah, and that's that
you
type
got
of thing that can be that little bit misleading.
But, just even... I've heard stories, I don't know if it's true or not, that like in England, they put plastic on car seats or use hire cars, because hire cars are cleaned more often than police vehicles. And so that's all,
different. Well,
contamination can come in many ways.
We've got to evolve and got to progress with the times. Biomechanics, have you got involved in that in much regards?
Only a little bit, and it was mainly in relation to obtaining experts to come and give that evidence. And it was mainly for bank hold-ups.
Yeah, yeah.
Where they were using information and measurements from the actual scene in the bank, like tiles on the floor, measure them, and the heights of counters and doorways and things like that. And then when the suspect comes in, they look at the suspect, and by taking measurements of the suspect and comparing with others, they're able to give you a rough idea of how tall they might be, the length of their stride and this and that. But a lot of times they come in crouching or they have a hood on. And so I got involved in a few cases in relation to that. But,
I just find it interesting with all the CCTV footage and someone walking down the street and we get an expert in to come in. Well, that's the gait he's got, or he drags his left foot, or things like that.
It's the same as a forensic podiatrist.
And
look at shoes and feet and things like that, and give you some information. But how often do police know of them and utilise them?
Well,
again, should come down to the crime scene, knowing and having that knowledge and make suggestions.
Well, what I've seen the change, and it's not criticism, it's just the way the police have evolved. But when I'd turn up to a crime scene and you're at the crime scene, I was confident that I let you do your job. You go in, you examine, and all that, because you understood it. You understood it from start to finish. And we've got, and I don't want to be critical of them because this is the way they're trained now, but I don't have the confidence that I've got a crime scene officer in at a crime scene looking for the type of things that you would look at. What do you put that down to? Sometimes
it comes down to has been training supervisor, and maybe shortcuts.
You know. Well, you can't go into a crime scene looking at the clock.
I think nowadays I would call them a recorder and a gatherer.
I hear what you're saying.
I might be wrong, but that's some of the impressions. I've reviewed a 160 odd page statement from a crime scene person. And hasn't told me much at all. It's just a general layout of the premises, and there's other things that should have been done that weren't done, and you think,
Well, I think that type of thing, when you were talking about having crime scene officers attached to a squad, be it homicide or sex crimes or whatever, could overcome that, get them part of the investigation, understanding what we're looking for and what we need. But,
well, I kept on pushing that for years. I remember when with the arson squad. I said the same thing. Should have a couple of crime scene people with the arson squad. You've got these.
Oh, that's something I wanted to talk to you about too, especially in light of what's recently happened here with all the bushfires. But it was in mid-90s, 94, around that time when we had some huge bushfires around Sydney, and I think you were assigned to investigate the fires, because a lot of them had been deliberately...
1994.
94, was it?
Yeah. I was on call.
Yeah.
And we had the Como Janelli fire.
Yeah.
That had been burning from the day before, and a number of houses were destroyed.
Yeah.
But, a woman had actually died.
Yeah.
And two young daughters were badly burnt.
Yeah.
And the husband just had singed hair.
Yeah.
But they were sort of trapped in the house, and Mum was the last one to come out, and just a big ball of flame. So I had to do that job. I couldn't do a great deal that night because of the heat.
Yeah.
Even the police couldn't even stay down there and guard the scene.
Yeah.
And the next day I was back there, and even my boots, rubber boots, soles of my boots were melting.
Yeah.
from the heat still in the bricks and
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, there was two investigators
Yeah.
from forestry and conservation, I think,
Yeah.
in Victoria.
Yeah.
And they were up assisting with the bushfires. And they had skills in relation to cause and origin of bushfires.
Yeah.
Whereas we in New South Wales didn't have much at all.
Limited. Yeah.
And so as a result of that, I was sent to meet them and that. So I basically learnt in the field of examining fire scenes,
Yeah.
bush scenes and that, and looking at fire indicators and the way things burnt and different vegetation, how it burns, and looking at what way the fire went and stuff like that. So I spent, quite a number of days with them.
Yeah.
Going through that particular fire scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the actual fire burned all the way down the bottom of the valley, following the river, and later in the afternoon it crossed over to Como, from Como Janelli area.
Yeah.
But as a result of that also, I had a small team, and we travelled New South Wales, looking at a great number of bushfires, going for cause and origin. We had...
and to establish if they're deliberately lit or natural
deliberately
causes.
lit,
And, And how can you tell the difference between a lightning strike and someone that's...
well, normally you can tell lightning strike. You know, like we went to a place called Mount Horrible, which is up near
Sounds like a fun
Bathurst,
place.
and there's a lot of ironstone.
Yeah.
And what had happened, some rural fire services people had gone out there to look at some trees that were still smouldering and stuff like that, and put them out, and they were cutting one down, and when it fell on one of the workers and killed them. So we went out to examine that scene for the coroner, and we could actually locate a scene where a tree had been hit by lightning.
Yeah.
And you could see all the marks and the burn marks, and you know, it's quite obvious that the fire had started from there. But also, whilst we were there was a bit of a storm, and we saw lightning strike the ground, and the next minute we see flames and smoke.
Right.
So it does happen. You know, it's like Holes. You take Holsworthy.
Yeah.
You know, we've had fires out there at Menai and down at Sandy Point. Yeah. And there's another place near Holsworthy, Voyager Point, I think it's called.
Yeah.
If a fire, and fires do often occur quite a bit on the range, no one can go on the range to put those fires out because of the unexploded ordnance and stuff like that. It's too dangerous. And sometimes these fires jump the road and burn out Menai and those other particular areas. So it makes it pretty hard to, determine how but they do start from lightning.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, cigarettes, but you've got to have the right condition. The cigarettes, someone flicking a cigarette out.
Yeah.
I talk about glass. A glass being like a magnifying glass, but the sun's moving, and so and you have the people who go and deliberately light fires. They use timing devices on occasions and things like that, such as mosquito coils or candles or this. Generally, if you go to a bushfire scene, you've got to gather a lot of information from the Rural Fire Service before you go out there. You know, like when did the fire start, where it started,
that's
how long, blah, blah, blah.
Base your examination.
Because with a bushfire, you generally work from the most burnt area back to the least burnt area.
Right, that's how you approach it.
Because with a fire burning forward in a bushfire, it also burns backwards and burns out to the sides. It depends on winds and conditions, their intensities. So if someone's going to light it, they're generally on the road or in a vehicle or a push bike or something, and they may not go too far.
Okay, I hadn't put my mind to it. So you start from where it's burnt and
go
work,
into the
work
bush
back.
and work your way back.
I would have started the other way. Lucky I wasn't investigating bushfires.
Well, house fires can generally do that way. Go for the least of the more intense, and when you get the more intense, that's where the fires started. But bushfires are a little bit different.
A wealth of knowledge, Steve, and now you're not...
Yeah, so I was really, the first in the state to be properly trained, and then I did a course down at Bateman's Bay with the same Victorian people and a number of people from the Rural Fire Service, and then later on I started passing that information off to our staff, a couple of courses up at Morisset and Coss Harbour, things like that, and now they have a course down Bateman's Bay way. But something different, something else to learn.
Yeah. Oh, it's all adds to the skills and the experience.
Plus also we assisted in running structural fire courses.
Yeah.
Where we set up fire scenes in some old derelict buildings at Morisset, the old hospital there. Various rooms we set up.
You were involved, I
techniques.
think you did the crime scene. What was the one down south, the nursing home, 16 people killed?
At Sabana Heights nursing home.
Yeah, was that one of
1980s,
one of your jobs?
Yes,
Yeah,
I was on call, got called out that night. I got assistance that night, but I spent 6 days. At that 6 days, I think I was at that crime scene.
16 people died from that fire.
Mainly all the males, one female, and some were strapped in their beds, but they died of smoke inhalation, and I think it was, I think it might have been cyanide fumes that came off the ceiling panels.
Right.
Because a lot of issues when we went to the coroner's court, that the way this place was being built and constructed and what they used, it should not have been used at all. Yeah, so I spent some time there, and obviously went to the coroner's court in relation to that. And I was the only police officer invited back to the reopening of the hospital.
Well, you must have
show me the fire doors and the alarm systems, and
left an impression. So with all this, the 50 years, with all this knowledge and that, how, and a life that's just full, like so many things you've experienced because of your work, you retire. How has it been since retiring? What have you been up to?
I started just doing things around my home and looking after, being a taxi driver for my granddaughter.
Pay back time to start doing the things.
Some gardening and things like that. Look, I miss the people.
Yeah.
I miss the work.
Yes.
I've had some phone calls.
Yeah.
Not many, but some assistance and can you help us where we might find this or that or something else. I know that there's an officer that's taken my role over, but I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
You left before me, and I remember on the day that you were walking out, I said, don't expect that you're not going to hear from me, because if there was any job, you were still my crime scene officer. You were the one I was going to phone. But look, you enjoying time away from it?
Oh, it's a bit different. I don't have to wear a tie every day. It's like having a 7-day weekend. But
you were doing a bit of lecturing.
I've done a couple of little bits here and there, and not that much. I've got to go and do a presentation at my granddaughter's high school because they've got a forensic science class. So the teachers found out about me.
They've got the expert in there. I'm sure you'll be able to answer those questions.
So maybe brighten up a classroom a bit with a few things. But no, I miss it.
Yeah,
I miss it.
Well, you and I started when we started this podcast talking about it because I thought it just typified the person you were or are, that what you did down at Matthew Leveson bush search when we were looking for Matthew Leveson's body. I was stuck, I was jammed on that, and there was one person I wanted to get down there, and that was you, and I made the call when you came down, and I know you came down on your own time, and I appreciated that so much because the experience and just like I'm an experienced homicide detective, but just the knowledge base that you brought when we're looking for a body in the bush, it blew me away. So I think that typifies the type of person you were in a career. Haven't heard anyone say anything bad about you. I just think you should be tremendously proud. You're an APM award winner or whatever they say, and well deserved for doing something above and beyond your service. So look, it's been a pleasure working with you. I miss not talking crimes with you, but I'm sure we'll come up with some reason to get in touch and talk about a crime.
May help you with your book.
And the Barraville matter.
Yes,
we're still going to push on that, and you're a wealth of knowledge there. But I might appear friendly, and I'm sitting here, but every guest that come on this show, I've asked a question, and it's going to be hard for you, but I'm going to ask it because I know you're humble. Tell me, with all the crime scene shows and all that, the actors, movies and TV shows, who do you think best represents you?
Me?
You.
Well, truthfully, no one.
Steve, you're not seeing CSI? Is it CSI Miami?
Yeah, but I don't watch it because I don't like it. It's not correct. It's not proper.
No, I know.
It's glamorised.
Steve, I've always seen you as glamorous. You
It's
might play it down.
glamorised. That's another,
Yeah.
like this, even Silent Witness,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is an English
yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah.
Where do we have pathologists going out and doing their own investigations
Well,
and going here and go? And I think that's not their role. That's what they're doing. And what's the Endeavour?
Endeavour?
Endeavour.
What's Endeavour? I have not...
That's It's to watch the movies. Was it Moss?
Oh,
He's now
right.
deceased.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the
yeah.
young Endeavour where he joins and does these investigations.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, they have a pathologist that does everything there on the spot, and within seconds gives them a time of death, and you think, God,
If only that was the real world.
Gary, TV have 40 minutes to
Yeah.
solve a case.
Yeah,
As you know, we can take 40 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's just the determination, not giving up,
Yeah.
keep on going like you've done over the years,
Yeah.
particularly with the Barraville and some of the other murders.
Yeah,
And that's what it is. I'm no one special.
yeah,
I've just done my job as best as I could,
yeah.
with the time and the equipment and the efforts. Today, they've got more equipment,
Yep,
more staff.
yep.
I was there at Campsie for
Yeah.
a number of years.
Yeah.
Then went to Hurstville. There was 3 of us.
Yeah,
Had 2 rooms.
yeah,
There's 3 of us in an office with 1 desk, a drawing board. The other room was a dark room.
yeah,
Now, our area went from basically the southern side of the airport, all the other side of Waterfall, plus all of Bankstown, Canterbury, right out to bloody
yeah,
Whoop Whoop. Now a lot of the areas are more contained, but because there's more police.
yeah.
They've all been drawn into
it.
to one location, and now they work 12-hour shifts. But
Yeah.
those days, we had 1 car.
Yeah.
You know,
What advice would you give to anyone joining the police now?
joining the police.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are 2 types of police officers.
Yeah.
One that joined for a job,
Yep.
and one that joined to do a job.
Interesting.
And the doers are the ones that are going to get on.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at general duties,
Yeah.
you have 12-hour shifts.
Yeah.
How many of those have a second job?
Yeah. Yeah.
Their police work could be their second job
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're
yeah.
plumbers and
Yeah.
builders and this and that.
Yeah.
So the ones that have come to do a job,
Yeah.
that's what I joined for,
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
a job
Yeah.
and to do it properly,
Yeah.
thoroughly, professionally.
Yeah.
Don't make mistakes. If
Yeah.
you don't know an answer to anything, don't make up something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you need to find out something, go and speak to the experts, whether they're
Yeah.
in the police or outside the police.
Yeah.
They're out there. Now, I know some outside experts cost money, but that's not your decision.
Yeah.
So, there's before I left Unsolved Homicide, we're asking about a piece of equipment
Yeah.
which is like a vacuum
Yeah.
with a special solution to take DNA off clothing and
Yeah.
other things like that. We don't have it here in Australia.
Yeah.
It's American. And but they get involved in new techniques and technology that we don't have. They've asked a question. So
Yeah.
rather than say I don't know, I
Yeah.
decided to make inquiries.
Yeah.
I spoke to the forensic research people. I spoke to McFass and things like that. So,
Yeah.
Good
advice, but join the job to do a job.
Yeah.
I think, we do forget that we're there to serve the public, and that's what we should be doing.
Well, that's what it's
Yeah,
there for,
yeah.
And that's why I got an APM,
Yeah.
because my service to
Yeah.
the community.
So, Steve, I remember the assistance you gave me with when I was looking for Matthews Levison's body, and so people understand the circumstances there. That's when we've had a person who was Matt's partner at the time, Michael Atkins, through a series of complicated legal manoeuvres, decided to tell us where he buried Matt's body. And it was down in the national park, down near Waterfall. And we took him down there at night, Michael Atkins, and he identified an area in the bushland that he believed that he buried Matt's body. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. He hadn't been there for 10 years. So he gave a general area. Based on that, next role was to look for the body, and where do you start when someone's there? We had some crime scene officers, good crime scene officers down there assisting, but we had searched for a couple of weeks and we were having no joy. And I think I contacted you, Steve, and I'm not sure if you were meant to come down or you did come down, but we never quite followed the rules. And you came down. I think it might have been in your own car, and you were talking me through the best way of looking for a body in those circumstances, drawing on your experience from the war crimes and other bits and pieces. And you talked about how we should do it in the series of trenches and explain the trenches. So we're digging. We had an area, I think it was about 600 square metres that we were searching at one stage, and doing in trenches. And you also talked about vegetation and gave us ideas on vegetation. What was your thoughts when you came down there? Did it seem insurmountable to you?
No, it didn't seem insurmountable, but I think that the method that was being used by the crime scene people at the time was not the correct method.
Yeah.
They were digging trenches,
Yep.
side by side. Now, using a backhoe and digging something out, you're going to destroy the body,
Yep.
and there may be important evidence,
Yep.
destroy the grave,
Yep.
or whatever. Whereas, which I learnt when I was doing the war crime stuff, and working with Professor Wright, who's the archaeologist, that I've done a couple of other cases with, even the desalination plant out at Kurnell where we found some skeletal remains, is you don't dig trenches, you actually scrape the vegetation. Scrape the ground, only certain amounts of it.
Yep.
So when I saw the crime scene digging down there, and there was information that the body may have been buried near a tree.
Yeah.
So my first day down there was a small backhoe.
Yeah.
So I went with that small backhoe and just scraped areas near some of the local trees and stuff like that, but didn't find anything. And then with the assistance of the National Parks backhoe, rather than dig the trenches, we started scraping the ground and scrape the vegetation away. Because sometimes just scraping vegetation away, you can actually see the outline of a grave. And that way you can even get right in close to large trees and things like that. So we were doing that for days and days, but that was still also digging trenches.
Yeah.
And we actually scraped over some of the trenches that had already been dug. And if you remember, at one stage we were scraping away, and we actually found remains of an echidna. Which you would not have found digging trenches. And I said, using this method, this is what, and nothing else had been found. No other remains, nothing. And so I was down there for a couple of days, and getting eaten by leeches,
we all got quite a few leeches down there.
Leeches, every bloody way. And so I couldn't go every day and things like that. So I just, when I could, I went down there, go straight from home, on my own car down there, and things like that. And you just continued to use that same method. And it was on that last day where you was going to finish up, and decided to dig a bit closer on the, I think, the left-hand side into the road. That actually,
it was
by using that method
under that tree, and
because the information that had been given, it was on the right-hand side, where it was in fact on the left-hand side.
It was a difficult situation, and that's where I make no bones about the fact that I reached out to you, because I was under a lot of pressure there. We had we'd been given this information. I don't know what we would have done if we didn't find the body. And I know like Mark and Faye Leveson, and when I introduced you to them, how comforted they felt by it when they got a sense of your experience and that coming down there to help them find their son. And there's little things like that that really stick with you in your career. And I know that they speak so highly of you, and they know you were down there. I think I introduced you as this young fella, and they saw through that.
Of course they would.
But no, it gave them comfort, and it was a horrible experience for everyone down there. When you got the parents of
every day
a child, and we're there with machinery looking for their body.
But they'd been in the park for years themselves, digging every weekend, and whenever they could.
Steve, I know you get it, and I certainly get it. That's why we can't give up on matters like this. The Mark and Faye would go down to the national park, and just with a pick and a shovel and dig looking for their son's body.
Even after we finished, on some of those days, they were still there, the pick and the shovel.
Oh, yeah, digging. I know. Well, we'd close it down after working for 8 hours, and they'd go, we just want to have a look around here and around there. And I think, that's what police have got to remember. That's what we're dealing with. But look, again...
But again, Gary, it's like, some jobs you go to, you've got some senior officer there or someone says, hurry up, how are you going to be? We need, particularly a motor vehicle accident, we need to open the road up. And you think, well, he's not going to go into court to give evidence.
Yeah.
I used to say to him, look, if you want me to finish up in a hurry, I'm going to make mistakes or not do the job properly, I'm going to put in my statement that you asked me to do this, so therefore you might have to go to court.
Yeah.
Throw it back then. I've had duty officers taken off the street.
I like your tactics, and they're the tactics I use. Okay, well, you just direct me to stop this investigation, I will, and you can explain to the coroner, or you can give evidence at court, and they shit themselves. I love the New South Wales Police. I don't want to beat up on them, but what I don't like is people that put personal ambition against over what their duties are. And our duties are there to serve the public.
Exactly
and
right.
You typify a public servant and getting in there and doing what you should do. So,
but also, if I go on with the Leveson case, I had contact from homicide again in relation to the murder of Naden's niece.
I remember, because they reached out to you based on your experience.
They found another bone and they wanted to know how to dig it.
Yeah.
When they did the first dig there, I don't want to discredit the crime scene people, but it's the most enormous setup I'd ever seen for a bloody dig, and I thought, they're going to miss so much. So I said to them how to do it again. Scrape, they dig trench, and they found more. We were on. So
you became the designated expert on finding...
now they homicide know to scrape and not dig trenches.
Yeah, well, that's how I like to think that's the legacy that people like yourself leave in the police, that your experience and you're passing it on, because we're only there for a short time.
Exactly
and
right.
we should be passing on that experience. So, it's been a journey.
Every time I see it on the news and, they're not digging it properly. Not looking at it properly.
Ring up and complain. You're a member of the public. Just write in a letter of complaint.
Look, I've even been asked to review a case from 1945.
Yeah. Did you work on it?
No. Yeah. For Russell Oxford.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's not a police investigation, but it's to help clarify some issues for the woman whose mother died under suspicious circumstances.
It's important. It's important, and that's you've got the expertise. Why not use it?
Got 2 photographs.
Yeah.
The crime scene statement.
Yeah.
2 black and white photographs from 1945.
Yeah.
Not great, And I've even tracked down other bits and pieces and things that hadn't been done. I thought should have been done.
Yeah.
But that's only because of, I suppose, as you said, my reputation.
Well, I'm hoping that people like you that have left the police aren't shy of reaching out to you when they need, because I know you'll help them out in any time, and you've got such wealth of experience, and it troubles me to think that wealth of experience is just cut off. Yep. So, Well, Steve, it's been an honour and a privilege to sit opposite you and talk about your career and your times and your thoughts. Been a pleasure working with you. There's certain things I miss about the cops, and part of that is missing working with people like you. So thanks very much.
Pleasure, Gary.
Really appreciate it.
Cheers.
If everyone in New South Wales Police had Steve Horn's attitude to work, we would be the best police force in the world. Make no mistake, crime scene investigation is one of the toughest areas to work in. Steve Horn has set the benchmark in his chosen field. It was an honour and a privilege to work with Steve. I have total respect for him. I think you have an understanding now why Steve Horn was my go-to person when I had a difficult investigation to solve. As I've said, at his send-off, he is an absolute legend. I don't use that word lightly. I hope you've enjoyed Series 1 of I Catch Killers with Gary Jublin. We're currently working on Series 2, where we will dig further into the world of catching killers. Catch you soon. Cheers. I Catch Killers is published by True Crime Australia. Produced by Claire Harvey from the Sunday Telegraph and Dylan Adams at Made in Katana. I'm now an investigative journalist at News Corp Australia, attached to the Sunday Telegraph. If you like the podcast, please subscribe to our newspapers.